Alright, hello everybody, and welcome to the first part of my quick tutorial on how to use physically based rendering in jMonkeyengine. I have seen so many people on the forums say that they do not use physically based rendering because they have no idea how to, and that's exactly why this tutorial is here. So, what is PBR even? Well, it's a different rendering approach than the standard Phong, however that is pronounced, that jMonkeyengine uses by default. And it's more physically accurate. It uses the laws to preserve the energy and other stuff. But I'm not here to talk about the theory. I'm just here to teach you how to use it in jMonkey. So if you need more theory or basics, or if you're interested in physics behind it, I'll link a file on Google Docs called PBR Encyclopedia, where there's like a lot of different resources and explanations. And if you want to go in depth, that's the place to go. So why would you use PBR over the good old Phong-based lighting model in jMonkey? Well, as you can probably see here, we have those nice reflections, and even this one. There's some reflectivity going on because I set this one to be glossy. You will not get any reflections in the standard lighting.j3md shader. So if you want reflections, which add a lot to photorealism, this is the way to go. The jMonkey's implementation of physically based rendering still changes a bit. So I'm using version 3.3 from the GitHub master branch. If you're using the 3.2 stable version, some things might look a little bit different, but shouldn't be any bigger changes. I will not go into the depths of the basics of physically based rendering terminology and stuff, but in order to understand what's going on, we'll quickly go over what is what. In this scene, I have made what is supposed to be a copper sphere and a glossy plastic one. These are fundamentally different in physically based rendering, because basically you can divide materials into two sections: metals and dielectrics, or non-metals. The difference here being that the metals can tint the color of the reflections. This is why everything appears reddish in the reflections on the copper ball, and everything kind of appears white-ish on the glossy surface of this plastic sphere. Every material you make is going to require at least 3 parameters. Usually you pass more parameters because you need fancy stuff, but 3 are absolutely required. So let's look at the first one, which is base color. Base color is basically what you know as diffuse from the Phong-based model jMonkey uses by default, but the main difference is that you're not supposed to bake any lighting information into a base color map. That's because in PBR we use separate texture channels for that, and base color map is basically supposed to be what you would see if you shone a bright white light very closely to the surface. From here on, you have 2 options. There are 2 workflows for defining the reflectivity of stuff in PBR, and jMonkey actually surprisingly supports both, although that's very often more of a nuisance than an actual benefit. The first workflow we're going to take a look at is the Roughness metallic workflow, which pretty much everybody uses when talking about PBR. As the name implies, Roughness metallic workflow consists of 2 values, roughness and metallic. I have already explained metallic. It can either be 1 or 0, so black or white, and indicates whether an object is made out of metal or a dielectric material. Roughness describes how reflective or non-reflective the object is. The bigger the value, the more microbumps the object has on the surface, and the less reflective it will be. For example, these spheres both have the roughness value set to 0. If we increase the roughness of this copper sphere here from 0 to let's say 0.2, as you can see, the reflections get very blurry, and if we increase it even further, they will probably disappear completely. Go roughness to 1. We will get, a completely rough metal surface, which actually looks surprisingly ugly for some reason. Well, metals are not supposed to be very rough usually, so it's best to leave their roughness somewhere from 0 to 0.1 section, unless you have scratches and stuff, and rust. But rust is already not a metallic material anymore, it's a dielectric, and therefore should have metallic set to 0. Dielectrics, on the other hand, are very commonly rough materials. Glossy plastic is a rare exception, probably. So I guess it's not the best example here. So let's set this green plastic to be a bit more rough in order for you to see how the roughness affects it. So usual rough values are somewhere around 0.8 or something, but you can always look it up on the internet. There are databases of physically accurate values for different materials. So yeah, you can see here we have now something that at least kind of looks like a matte plastic, but you should probably check out and test these values for yourself. The roughness values are supposed to be between 0 and 1. The other workflow, called spec gloss or specular glossiness workflow, is for those who want to create materials which are not physically possible. Because you know how I mentioned how metals tint the color of the reflection? Well, with specular glossiness workflow, you can actually change the tint of the specular color, the reflection color, on any material, which is not quite physically possible in real life, but for artistic effect, why not? First parameter in this workflow is the specular color. Basically, it's the tinted color which reflections will be. It's generally white for all the materials except colored metals like copper, gold, and other similar metals. I'm actually thinking about it. I don't think there are any other metals that are not just gray, because even the gray metals are supposed to have white specular color. But of course, if you're using this workflow, you're probably trying to create something that's not physically possible, so set this color to whatever you want. The other parameter in this workflow is glossiness, which is basically just an inverted roughness map. The shader in jMonkeyengine does not invert this for you, so you will have to provide a separate glossiness map. Sad, I know, but it's not like many people use this workflow anyway. This parameter is sometimes also called reflectivity map, shininess map, stuff like that. It basically defines how shiny a material is, with 0 being completely rough, like this one, and 1 being completely shiny, like the copper sphere here. I do not personally use this workflow, so therefore I do not have any examples ready, sadly. But with that, I think we are done with the basic parameters of PBR, along with the spec gloss workflow, and are ready to look into the specific quirks of jMonkey's PBR shader. If you go and try to examine the parameters of the PBR lightning.j3md material definition, there's like a lot of parameters. Like, seriously, a lot. But let's go through them one by one, and they will hopefully make sense. Normal map, you know this one from the regular lightning.j3md, so I'm not gonna talk about it. We have explained what specular is. We have parallax map. Okay, that's basically, if you already know what parallax is from the regular lightning.j3md, then this is basically the same. If you don't, then this is a way for the real-time renderer to simulate bumps in the map. So you put bump or height maps into this slot. This goes along with the somewhere here the parameter called parallax height here. You should set it to like a very small number for it not to look completely garbage. Like 0.005 or something works fine for me. Actually, we have an example of that on this concrete panel here. You can see how there's like, please, such a salad, jMonkey. But there's like tiny bits sticking out like that. That's the parallax effect. And if we go to the concrete material and increase the parallax height, yeah, it's actually 0.002. If we set it to, let's say, 0.01, you will actually probably see a huge difference. Sir? Yeah, as you can see, it's much more pronounced and it looks weird. So I do not recommend using big numbers for this one. The next slot we're gonna take a look at is the light map slot. This is where the ambient occlusion map enters. You remember how I said the base color is not supposed to have any lighting information? Well, this is where you enter it. I have no idea why the light map is actually supposed to be used for, because in order for it to accept ambient occlusion maps, you will have to check the light map as AO map parameter. Although I am not entirely sure how ambient occlusion affects anything in the renderer, so I'll have to still experiment with that. Up next are the shadow maps, which are basically automatically set by the shadow renderer. We have the base color maps, which I have already explained. We have the metallic map, roughness map. The metallic roughness map, okay, this one is basically a combination of a metallic and a roughness map compressed into a single texture. Because you know how the metallic and roughness are basically just values from 1 to 0 and can only be black and white, or somewhere in between. Well, somebody has figured out, hey, why not let's just pack the metallic in the red component of the color and the roughness into the green component, and that's how you get a metallic roughness map. Up next is the emissive map. This is basically known as glow map in the regular lighting shader. But you should know that for some reason, whoever designed this shader decided that it is not gonna have a glow technique, which basically means that you will have to set your bloom filter to the scene mode for it to work, because objects mode is designed to work with materials that have the glow technique, and PBR lighting does not. I do not know what's the reason behind it, but that's how it is. Up next we have the glossiness map, which we already know, and the specular glossiness map, which is similar than metallic roughness map, but for the specular glossiness workflow. Then we can manually set the specular color, base color, and emissive color if we don't want to use the maps. I have quickly gone through the other Boolean and float parameters here, and there's nothing really of notice for people who know how lighting.j3md works, except maybe the fact that you can set glossiness, metallic, and roughness as a float number directly in here, if you're making the whole sphere a certain color or material. But that's pretty much it about the material. So, what's up next? Well, end of this tutorial, of course. But no. While you now understand how PBR works, we still haven't discussed how these reflections are actually generated. And you might have noticed there's a thing called light probe here, which is actually positioning the scene up here. This is a thing that captures the reflections, and we're gonna talk more about them next time. So, thanks for watching. I hope I was correct and informative. If anything was wrong, correct me down below. I'm learning still. So, thanks for watching. Goodbye.